Okay, so I think we're going to start our meeting. Let me introduce myself. My name is Julian Barbier. I'm the head of Marine Policy and Regional Coordination at the IOC, and will have a pleasure to facilitate this session today, which is really aimed at informing you, member states representative, on this very important event that is happening in a few months from now in Nice, in France. This is the 2025 United Nations Ocean Conference, co-hosted by the government of France and Costa Rica. And this is, of course, a very important moment for the ocean community to take the pulse in terms of how we are doing in advancing and improving the health of our ocean, but also how we are generating efforts to support actions at all levels to move towards more sustainable pathways. The role of those UN Ocean Conference, and this is the third that is happening. The first one was in 2017, and then in 2022 in Portugal. And the purpose of those conferences are very much to advance the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goal 14, the Ocean SDG, realizing that the SDG 14 is probably the least funded of all SDGs within the Agenda 2030. And this is why it has a kind of a dedicated mechanism to really mobilize partnerships and actions of member states and other stakeholders to advance ocean sustainability. So what we aim to do today is primarily to give you more information about the planning and the organization of the UN Ocean Conference. More importantly, probably, is for you to understand how, as member states, you can engage in those processes. And there are different pathways, both at the policy, the political level, but also in terms of putting forwards ideas, suggestions, and commitments towards advancing the goals of SDG 14. We'll talk a little bit about the outcomes of the conference and how we, as the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, are moving forward in our preparations towards the conference, and what kind of events we are planning to organize, and again, how you can take part in those events at different level. But before we go into the nitty-gritties, it's my pleasure, first of all, and I'll ask just for the next slide to come up, to give you the overall vision of this hour and a half that we have in front of us. And we want this to be a very interactive session. And first of all, let me also highlight that this is we'll kindly ask you to mute during the presentations. We will certainly have time at the end of the presentations for Q&As. So please, keep your microphones muted until then. And then when we get to the Q&A, you'll have a possibility to raise your hand to ask questions. We will not be monitoring the chat, so we really prefer to have oral interventions. And we will also be recording this session. So in case you are not able to stay until the end, rest assured that this will be shared by our secretariat and sent to all the member states through the usual channels. So that's the logistical aspects, but let's go now into the welcome and the opening remark. And it is, first of all, my pleasure to invite the co-host of the UN Ocean Conference and their representatives to give us a word of address on how they see this process unfolding and their expectations. And it's my pleasure to start with Her Excellency Ambassador Ana Elena Pinto-Lisiano, representative of Costa Rica to UNESCO. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Julian, for giving me the floor. I would like to begin these brief remarks by acknowledging the committed involvement of Secretary Helgensen and his team at IOC in the lead-up to UNOC in Nice, just a few weeks from now. We strongly believe that science must be at the core of our actions, and more and better science is what we need to inform the national and international political decisions that will determine the immediate future of our ocean and of our well-being along with it. IOC is a big player in this regard, and there is no doubt that we all share a mutual concern about the ocean, our ocean, and that we are striving to be part of the solution that many challenges it is facing. As a co-host of the upcoming conference, Costa Rica is convinced that it must be an action-oriented event. It was the same vision that guided Costa Rica in the preparing of the high-level event called Immersed in Change, held in San Jose on June 2024, 1 year to the day before UNOC 3. This event, where IOC was present as well, was decisive in inspiring action, bringing the ocean community together, and most of all, supporting efforts to protect our ocean. We envision this event to be centered around sharing experiences and good practices to motivate ourselves and all stakeholders about the change in our relationship with the ocean and what we expect to achieve. It was this high ambition that guided Costa Rica and France during the preparatory meetings last summer in New York, where the themes of the 10 ocean action panels were decided. We strongly believe that these OAPs, as we call them, will address major issues that will help improve the implementation of SDG 14, particularly the one related to the strengthening of scientific cooperation, sharing of knowledge, capacities, marine technology, and education to support the interface between science and policy in the ocean health. As for the political declaration that will be adopted as a result of the conference and that just has begun to be negotiated, Costa Rica believes that it should be unequivocally oriented towards decisive action. To this end, we strive to keep it short, concise, and focus on the way ahead as mandated by the UN General Assembly. Excellencies, dear colleagues, the Barcelona Conference on the Ocean Decade in April last year, the 9th Our Ocean Conference in Greece in May, and Immersing Change in June were stepping stones to UNOC. We must continue gathering steam and do our best to ensure the momentum is not lost and that we can capitalize on UNOC with the concrete and decisive actions. We look forward to broad presentation at the highest level, which will serve as a testament to the importance we place on the health of our ocean, and at the same time signal the start of the new era of protection of sustainable use of its resources. Thank you very much.
You are muted.
Thank you very much. I have already concluded. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for those words and for laying out the expectations of Costa Rica in terms of what you would like to see coming out of this conference. So now it's my pleasure to invite the other co-host of the UNOC conference. This is Mr. Ashak Adisseam, who is Deputy Special Envoy for the Ocean and UNOC General Delegate for France, for his opening words. Over to you, dear Ashak.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, I wanted to prove to you that I'm in Paris, so I'm still walking towards my office, but I'm listening, and I'm still able to maybe do this delivery, this opening remarks. First, to thank our co-host and Ambassador Elena for her words. To thank you, the IOC, for your partnership in this common UNOC that we are preparing for 4 months now. This way we are running around because time is running as well. We were last week together in New York addressing the member states with our UN colleagues. First for the political declaration, and with the permission of Elena, I'll read out the joint declaration that France and Costa Rica had prepared to address the member states. And also we were in New York to co-host France and Costa Rica with the IOC and the support of Dualos, this Science for Action event that we delivered at the same time as the negotiations were taking place on the political declaration. Why? First, because with Costa Rica, we have decided, since we started more than 18 months ago, to put science at the heart of UNOC, at the heart of policy decision and policy makers. And so we have been mobilizing all the scientific communities in the world, and not alone, but through the channel of the IOC and other major scientific institutions during, I would say, key moments in the calendar of engagement, starting with Barcelona, which was a very important moment for all of us at midterm of the ocean decade, where not only the scientific community was together, but also a lot of decision makers, head of states as well, ministers, and we proved together, and thanks to you at the IOC and the decade, that we are working all together collectively to develop this science to policy platform, which we hope will be one of the outcomes of UNOC in general, and specifically of the One Ocean Science Congress that we are co-organizing with Ifremer CNRS, and a very strong support, I must say, and thank them, of the IOC. So having said that, on the two fronts, which is policy and science, if you allow me, Julian, I will now go through the political declaration, joint political declaration that France and Costa Rica, we shared with our colleagues at the UN last week. First, we are very grateful to the co-facilitators of this political declaration, which are Australia and Capo Verde, who have taken the leadership in a very tough process, I must say, where we collectively want to put the ocean at the top of the global affairs agenda as much as climate and biodiversity, having in mind that UNOC is dedicated to SDG 14. We first wanted to focus in our declaration that we wanted more explicit call for the successful progress of ocean-related multilateral processes, such as the agreement on zero emission in marine transport by 2050 at the IMO, and moving forward with an ambitious legally binding instrument on to eliminate plastic pollution. Hence, the role of science in these processes are very important. Similarly, we spoke about the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and its related targets, including pollution and halting species extinction in 2022 by directly mentioning threatened marine species in the political declaration. And let's see, and we count on your support. We wanted also to include a recommitment to ensure the protection at least of 30% by of the ocean by 2030, and phasing the swift entry into force of the BBNJ agreement. We believe that it's the mother of all battles, the ratification of this high seas treaty and its entry into force, thanks to 60 champion countries whom by June 25, in 4 months, would have ratified BBNJ. And we also are working on projects that ensure that marine protected areas are well managed in our own exclusive economic zones and not overlooked. So that was mainly the main messages on the political declaration with France and Costa Rica at the beginning of last week's session. And then, as far as France is concerned now, during the event dedicated to the Science We Want and the Science to Policy platform, I spoke mainly about considering the ocean as 70% of the Earth's surface is a new global frontier, just as space was in the past decades and even now with the conquest of Mars. We believe the ocean represents an immense potential for innovation, scientific research, multilateral diplomacy, that's what we're doing just now, and also cultural exchanges based on the notion of
surpassing oneself and also of progress. With its complex and interdependent ecosystem, the ocean is a source of solutions to global challenges such as climate change, food security, and the preservation of diversity. So just as space created emulation and then United Nations around a common dream of exploration and progress, we believe the ocean offers a unifying vision, and that's the One Ocean promise. So beyond the economy, the ocean is also a vector for dialogue and international cooperation. Marine areas beyond national jurisdiction, for instance, which is the subject of this multilateral agreement we've been discussing of. The ocean can transcend borders beyond exclusive economic zones, creating opportunities for scientific exchanges that strengthen solidarity and understanding between people. So by investing in marine research and technological innovation, the major maritime nations are developing knowledge and preservation for this crucial environment while developing sustainable solutions for future generations, and that is for all. The ocean thus becomes not only a laboratory for science, and this is the good fora to speak about science, I know, but also a symbol of peace and international cooperation guiding humanity towards a shared future where economic prosperity, ecological resilience, and global stability can coexist harmoniously. So that's I would say, the mindset in which the co-host and all its partners, including the IOC, you said, Julian, that was music to your ears last week, are engaging towards UNOC, and we need each and every stakeholder to come together to Nice to make this UNOC 3 a game changer and a peacemaker, I would say, in our global affairs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ashok, for those words and for very much setting the bar, the tone of what we need to achieve in Nice in a few months from now. And I think indeed, also, congratulations for your leadership role for both Costa Rica and France in mobilizing other nations around the world, and also putting the role of science really at the heart of all of this as a pathway for delivering solutions for many of the planetary boundaries issues that are affecting our ocean: pollution, biodiversity, climate change, amongst a few. So I think the scene is set. And I hope you both get a chance to stay throughout the session in case there are also some comments or questions from our other member states. But I would like now to pass on the floor to our Executive Secretary, Vidar Helgesen, to talk a little bit more about the priorities for IOC in this third UN Ocean Conference in Nice, particularly the role of science, but some level of expectations where we would like to see at the end of that very important week in June. So my pleasure to pass the floor now to Vidar for his vision on what needs to be done. Over to you, Vidar.
Thank you, Julian, and thanks to all of you for joining this session. And let me echo Julian in thanking the co-hosts for the immense energy and work put into this, the collaborative spirit put into this, and not least for having really placed science and knowledge at the heart of the planning for UNOC. The IOC, in preparing for UNOC, is obviously not the organizer. It's organized from the UN Secretariat in New York and from the co-hosts, but we are all over this in terms of collaboration and in terms of contributions. And for us, the starting point is our mandate. We have our statutes that are decided by our member states. And in those statutes, there is a mandate given to the IOC, which is to promote international cooperation and to coordinate programs in research services and capacity building, so generating ocean knowledge. And the other part of that mandate is to support the application of that knowledge for improving management of the ocean, sustainable development, protection of the marine environment, and decision-making processes. So it's a fairly wide mandate, but focused very much on the fact that all of this capacity building, decision making, management must be based on knowledge. This is reflected in the priorities that we have for UNOC. And if we go to the next slide, we will have a look at those. We want UNOC to advance ocean science and knowledge as a basis for action to achieve SDG 14. And we have settled on 6 priorities that will generate action and partnerships, not only for us to flag these issues at UNOC, not only for us to have events at UNOC, but to mobilize and generate action that will carry well beyond UNOC. One of those engagements is to strive to fulfill the critical knowledge priorities through the UN Decade for Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, which the IOC is the hub and the secretariat for. We had last year the Barcelona conference, the UN Decade Conference, which concluded with a statement outlining priorities for the remainder of the decade. The UNOC, the UN Ocean Conference, will mark midway in the ocean decade. And we see that this immense mobilization that the ocean decade is, notwithstanding, there are still huge knowledge gaps. There is still a lot we don't know about the global distribution and human health impacts of marine pollution. There is still a lot we don't know about the specific impacts of climate change, particularly on the deep sea ecosystems. And climate change is changing the ocean continuously, so updated knowledge is necessary as we go. There is a lot we don't know about consequences of efforts to mitigate climate change, not least the challenge of marine carbon dioxide removal, which is a popular and increasing area for research and action. We need to know what the consequences are of those kinds of interventions before scaling them up. These are examples of knowledge that we still need. Much related to that is the need to increase investment in ocean science and not least infrastructure for ocean observation. There is no lived human experience in the ocean. We're fully dependent on ocean observation in order to get that knowledge. And while there is a lot, and while we are the Secretariat for the Global Ocean Observing System, we have the Ocean Biodiversity Information System, which is the go-to place for knowledge about ocean biodiversity. While we are the repository and knowledge holders of these things, again, there are still huge gaps, and not least in the more southern parts of the ocean. We need more ocean observing. Traditionally, we have been seeing ocean observation as something for oceanographers and their devices out at sea, coming from science budgets. We're now seeing a need to look differently at ocean observing as critical societal infrastructure. It's critical for safety and security, for predicting extreme weather events, for maritime safety and security. It's critical for developing new ocean industries. New ocean industries depend on ocean observing. It's critical for protecting, knowing which areas are most important to protect in the ocean. And obviously, ocean observation is key to learning more about all those things we still don't know about the ocean. So increasing investment in ocean observing is no longer only about science. It's about fundamental interests for society. Thirdly, we have a priority on accelerating sustainable ocean plans, including supporting member states to develop and implement such plans. We need, for the one ocean we have, to see coastal states and ocean states plan better for their ocean territories, taking an integrated ecosystems-based, knowledge-based approach, and planning for protection, but also planning for sustainable use of ocean territories through developing sustainable ocean management. There is a drive, not least by the co-chairs, for more countries to commit to such planning at the UN Ocean Conference. we are a knowledge partner in that endeavor. Fourthly, we need to boost efforts to generate data, knowledge, and capacity to support implementation of commitments that member states have undertaken, not least when it comes to the Treaty on Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction and the Global Biodiversity Framework, which obviously is encompassing terrestrial and ocean ecosystems. But since the ocean is the bigger part of the planet, a lot to be done there. Since we have the Ocean Biodiversity Information System, we are a go-to place for member states in getting the knowledge needed to make the right decisions and to support their implementation of their commitments. But even in that system, there's still a lot of biodiversity in the ocean that has not yet been mapped. So we need to strengthen and boost the generation of new data. Fifthly, we need to ensure collaborative action for disaster risk reduction and preparedness in the face of ocean hazards. As many of you are aware, we are running the global tsunami warning system, but we're seeing more and more other hazards coming from the ocean. Many of the extreme weather events we're seeing around the world originate from a warming ocean, and better
Just ask Dinah, I'm on a meeting.
You could please mute your microphones, thank you. Vidar, you're muted now. You're the only one who's not allowed to mute.
I didn't mute myself, so somebody must have muted me. We need for effective disaster risk reduction to predict better the ocean, the hazards coming from the ocean. So that's a key priority. And then finally, we want to accelerate efforts for reaching the goal set to map the global seafloor by 2030. We're still only at below 30% of the ocean seafloor having been mapped, or at least having data for less than 30% of the seafloor. We have, there's a lot of data out there that can be unlocked, both from public and private actors. But so if those data were unlocked, we would get to way more of the seabed being mapped, but we also need to generate new data. And the Alliance for the Ocean Decade, which is comprising a number of heads of state and government, heads of corporations and heads of philanthropies and organizations, have committed to making a call for nations and corporations to do more for the goal of mapping the global seafloor. So these are our priority engagements. They will mark and influence our input to the political declaration, our participation in the plenary at UNOC, our official side events, and other events and launches at UNOC. And we'll hear more on those specific plans from Julian and from Alison in my team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vidar, for laying out its priorities. And as you said, indeed, those will very much translate in the actions and the different channels of that we have to engage into the UN Ocean Conference. So I think the next step for us is really to dig a little bit deeper on the process itself, the conference, its formal components, but also the special events that are going to be organized around that very busy week from the 9th to the 13th of June. So now I'm going to ask my colleague Alison Clausen from the IOC and Deputy Coordinator for the decade to run us through some of those format and structure elements of a conference, as well as to ask her to highlight the engagement opportunities for member states. So Alison, if you're ready, over to you.
Great, thank you. And good morning, good afternoon to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. So in this part of the presentation, we're going to get a little bit more operational, a little bit more into the nuts and bolts of how the conference is going to roll out. As Julian said, some of the entry points, the potential ways to engage. And then we'll also look afterwards, towards the end of the presentation, at the special events that are happening actually before the formal conference begins. So this first slide just to give aims to give you a bit of an overview of the week or the 10 days that will take place in Nice and in Monaco in June. I think it's something like 17 weeks away now. So as Ashok said, time is flying by very fast. The overall series of events will start with the One Ocean Science Congress from the 3rd to 6th of June. This is one of the 3 pre-conference special events, and this will be held in Nice itself. This is being led by IFREMER and CRNS, 2 French research institutions. That will be followed by two other events, one in Nice and one in Monaco. In Nice, there is the Coastal Rise and Resilience Summit, another pre-conference special event, which is being led by the municipality of Nice, which is a summit which aims to convene mayors from coastal cities, around 1,000 coastal cities around the world, to talk about some of the issues facing coastal cities in terms of resilience, and particularly in relation to sea level rise. That will be held in parallel with the 3rd pre-conference special event, which is the Blue Economy and Finance Forum, which is being called the BEF, which is actually being held in Monaco, and that's being held over a day and a half on the 7th and 8th. This is being organised by the Prince Albert II of Monaco Foundation, along with the Oceanographic Institute of Monaco, under the co-chairpersonship of Elena Said from Palau and Pascal Lamy from the European Commission. So these are the 3 special events running from the 3rd through to the afternoon of the 8th, and then the formal conference itself will kick off on the 9th of June and run through to the 13th of June. So as I indicated, what I'd like to do is focus more on the formal conference itself, and then at the end I'll come back to the pre-conference special events. And for each of these, I'll give you a bit of an overview of the information of how these pieces are going to be put in place. Obviously, engagement opportunities for member states, and then starting to look at some of the areas where IOC is already planning its engagement in line with the role and priorities that Vida just went through in his intervention. So let me just get to the next slide. So in terms of the formal conference itself, we're going to look at first the political declaration, which is the major outcome of the conference, and then we'll talk about the ocean action panels, the side events, and the voluntary commitments to the conference. But starting with the political declaration, Ashok and Ambassador Pinto have already made reference to the importance of this declaration. As I said, it is the key outcome from the conference as a non-legally binding declaration from member states. It is a document that is currently being negotiated, and we understand that the aim is to have the negotiations complete and the declaration adopted before early May this year. The negotiations, as you heard, started on a 0 draft version of the declaration last Monday in New York. There are several more rounds of negotiations planned in coming months. There is a tentative timeline for those. What we saw in New York last week is there is a lot of interest, a lot of discussion around the political declaration and how it can be strengthened, streamlined, and made very impactful and powerful to build on the declarations from the 2 previous United Nations Ocean conferences that were held in 2017 and 2022. So we're also waiting for more information from UNDESA in terms of the exact next dates and the exact next steps in the negotiation of the political declaration, which we will of course share that information through our channels as well as we receive it, and I'm sure you'll be receiving it as well. We will aim with future versions of the political declaration, as we did for the 0 draft, to continue the work that we've been doing on analysing the the text of the political declaration and pointing out perhaps areas or suggestions where we feel, based on the mandate of IOC generally, as well as our priorities for UNOC, where we feel there is opportunity to potentially strengthen the political declaration. You will have seen, many of you, that the circular letter 3023 that was sent out in the third week of January did that for the zero draft of the political declaration. And these, you can see here, some of the issues that we identified in the zero draft that we felt could certainly be strengthened moving to the next version of the political declaration, including increased alignment with some of the science and knowledge priorities identified in the Barcelona statement, the issues around the need for increased and tangible commitments for increased financing and investment by member states and other actors for ocean science, including for ocean science infrastructure. And then we identified some issues that were not, or that are not currently mentioned in the political declaration, that we have identified as priorities for UNOC coming out of Barcelona, and other processes that we suggested may warrant inclusion in the declaration, such as seabed mapping commitments, disaster risk reduction, ocean literacy, and support to Indigenous-led research. So again, we will continue this process of analysing and providing suggestions and perspectives to member states with future versions of the political declaration. I think we were very encouraged to see the great level of interest and debate and discussion that there was in New York about the declaration, indicating that member states are taking this very seriously. And so, of course, we stand by to provide the support that we can to help you in that process of engaging in the negotiations and discussions around the declaration. The next element of the formal Congress that I'd like to talk about then is the ocean action panels. And so this slide actually shows the current program for the formal conference from the 9th till the 13th of June. And you can see, putting aside the circles for a moment, you can see that the 5 days are essentially made up of a mix of plenary sessions, as well as these 10 ocean action panels. And the 10 ocean action panels are really heart of some of the debate and the dialogue that will happen throughout the conference. They are across a wide range of themes, as you can see there, ranging from conserving and managing ecosystems to a panel more around ocean science, looking at mobilising finance, marine pollution, small-scale fisheries and sustainable aquatic foods, sustainable ocean-based economies and resilience, ocean climate biodiversity linkages, regional cooperation, looking at sustainable food for poverty eradication and food security, and then looking at the role of international law and UNCLOS in enhancing the conservation and sustainable use of oceans and their resources. So a very broad and diverse range of topics, although interrelated with linkages between these. As has been the practice in the previous UNOCs, different UN agencies are asked to take the leadership on the development and the providing some of the substantive issues for discussion in the panels, under, of course, the leadership of UNDESA and the co-hosts of the conference, and through the UN Oceans Mechanism, which is the interagency coordination mechanism of the UN for ocean issues. Different groups have been formed to basically lead on the development of these different panels. And so the circles you can see there show you where IOC is playing a role in the development of these different ocean action panels. And you can see that we are involved in some way in the vast majority of them. We're co-leading the preparation of 2 of these panels. So Ocean Action Panel 2, which will be held in the afternoon of the 9th of June, around ocean-related scientific cooperation, capacity building, marine technology, including education, ocean literacy, and the issues around science policy interface for ocean health. And then the second Ocean Action panel we are leading will be in the morning of the 12th of June, which is around ocean climate and biodiversity linkages. So those are the two that are shown in orange on this figure. The other circles in blue are those Ocean Action panels where we are contributing to the process of development. Now, in very concrete terms, what that means is that we are either co-leading or contributing to the development of background papers that will inform the discussions during these panels, and also providing suggestions and advice on the guiding questions that the panelists will be addressing during their dialogue and discussions. We are also making suggestions for speakers during those panels, although the identification of speakers is a process that is very much led by you, Endesa, with the co-hosts for France and Costa Rica. The way that the panels typically run is as three-hour slots, co-chaired by member states, and then with a variety of high-level speakers talking to the guiding questions and interacting with the delegates to the conference. So these are our important moments to really be able to raise some of the issues, some of the priorities, including those that Vida mentioned, and we're working very hard to ensure that the background papers, the guiding questions, and our suggestions for panelists are very robust and really reflecting our thinking, our priorities, and the latest knowledge that is available to guide the discussions and really help contribute to the overall theme of UNOC around accelerating action for SDG 14 implementation. So moving on now to the next element of the formal conference, where things are starting also to accelerate, and this is around the official side events. First of all, just to explain to you perhaps the map, and apologies just for the extract from Google Maps, but it was the best way to try and show two key areas that will be, or two key geographic locations that are very relevant for the conference, including for the side events. So you can see the blue circle at the bottom of this slide on the overlay and on a part of the port of Nice. This is where the Blue Zone, the formal conference venue, will be located, and it's something that is currently being constructed. For those of you who know Nice, this is obviously a beautiful area on the water, and throughout, or in the adjacent area there, throughout the port, we understand there will be opportunities to have different types of ships and research vessels that are going to be berthed. So it should be a very active and dynamic area around the Blue Zone where the formal conference is taking place. To the north then of the blue circle, you'll see that green circle, which is a very approximate circle around the proposed location of the green zone for the conference. The green zone being the area that is generally more open to public and to non-formally accredited people who want to attend different events and so forth. We understand that the green zone is being built out as a series of pavilions and spaces, and with opportunities for different events and for different cultural events and so forth. There's about a 25-minute walk between the two, with the but both located relatively within the centre of Nice. So they're important, I think, locations to keep in mind. And the reason I'm bringing that up here when talking about the side events is that we understand that side events will be held both in the Blue Zone and the Green Zone itself. The application for side events opened last week, and the application identifies the objectives of side events as being initiatives that are really focused on sharing knowledges and solutions in the aim of implementing SDG 14, identifying new and emerging issues, exchanging experiences and practices, and showcasing voluntary commitments. And we'll come to the voluntary commitments in a moment. As I said, there are opportunities for applications for Blue Zone and Green Zone side events with different deadlines. So the Blue Zone side events, the deadline is in mid-March. The green zone side event is in April. We understand that there is one application per accredited organisation that is allowed, which is very much in keeping with past UNOCs, and that it is very clearly stated that priority for side events within the blue zone, so within the formal conference venue, will be given to those that are side events organised by member states and those organised in partnership with several networks or organisations. And we understand from discussions with colleagues at UNDESA, also with our dear colleagues from Costa Rica and France, that the aim is really to have action-oriented side events that are really showcasing innovative solutions and that bring together a number of partners, including member states. Several member states have already reached out to the Secretariat, and thank you for that, to propose ideas for side events or to ask if there is interest in collaborating in side events. We are very enthusiastic to continue those discussions and keen to engage with either individual member states or groups of member states to look at opportunities for collaboration and development of side event proposals that are in line with the role and priorities that Vida outlined. So please do feel free to reach out and discuss that. The deadline, particularly for the Blue Zone side events, is going to come around very quickly. So that's a fairly or a sort of a short-term thing that we should be thinking about if there is interest in engaging on the development of side events, particularly for the Blue Zone. The next piece of the formal conference that I wanted to talk about before quickly going on to a discussion of the pre-conference side events, pre-conference special events and parallel events with the voluntary commitments. So the idea of voluntary commitments first emerged in 2017 with the very first United Nations Ocean Conference held in New York as a way really of capturing and documenting and theoretically tracking the implementation of a broad set of initiatives that are all aiming to contribute to the implementation of SDG 14. There are currently over 2,000 voluntary commitments. They can be actually submitted at any time, but as you can imagine, there's always a burst of activity around the different United Nations Ocean Conference. They range from, relatively small NGOs that are focused on local initiatives to broad global initiatives, including, for example, the Ocean Decade, which is a voluntary commitment in itself. So they're very diverse. They're organized loosely into 9 what are called communities of action, so 9 thematic communities of action. And these communities of action are more or less active, I would say, in bringing together some of the voluntary commitment holders to collaborate, to track implementation, and to look at how really to use these voluntary commitments to leverage and accelerate greater action. There was a high-level meeting in Korea in mid-January to look at voluntary commitments, to look at the ways in which tracking, monitoring, leveraging could be improved. And we're waiting to see some of the formal outcomes. We were represented, of course, in that meeting and have heard some of the outcomes informally, but looking very much forward to hearing from UNDESA and others on plans to really continue to work with and make the most of these voluntary commitments. One issue that we have been discussing, certainly with the co-hosts and with UNDESA, is the idea for the 2025 United Nations Ocean Conference to start looking at how we could really bring together member states to have greater collective impact around shared voluntary commitments, or to have some common voluntary commitments. And we've been starting to sketch out what some of these voluntary commitments could potentially look like. And again, I think no surprise when you see these here, as they align very much with the priority areas that Vida mentioned, but looking at potentially seeing how we can work with you as member states, and of course with other actors as well, around some common or collective voluntary commitments, for example, for support to the priorities of the Ocean Decade, for support to investment for ocean observation and data infrastructure, to increased commitments to seabed mapping. And that's something, for example, that the members of the Ocean Decade Alliance are working on very closely at the moment, and are planning to come together in a collective voluntary commitment for UNOC if we can get everybody on board before then. And then sustainable ocean planning. So this is an area I think that's still being looked at and seeing the best way that we could structure this, but this is certainly something, if you're thinking about the updating or making new voluntary commitments and would like to talk about or discuss the ways in which we could bring some of these together around collective priorities. Again, the Secretariat is very open to having those discussions. So those were the four main elements of the formal conference. Of course, we'll come to questions on that, but just before we wind up, I've just got a couple more slides looking at the pre-conference special events and some of the parallel events, particularly that IOC is already planning and starting to develop, because this will give you, I think, a broad overview of the other types of events that are complementing that the more formal conference structure from the 9th to 13th of June, sorry. So starting with the pre-conference special events, as I said, the first of these is the One Ocean Science Congress, organised by CNRS and IFRAMER, that will take place actually in the formal conference venue before it officially becomes the Blue Zone. This is going to be a congress that is structured around 10 different themes that align very closely to the Ocean Action Panels, also align very closely to some of the key priorities coming out of Barcelona, which is not a coincidence, because we've been working very closely with the co-chairs of the Congress to make sure that this alignment is as strong as possible. The Congress is going to be for about 1,800 people, a mixture of plenary, keynote, abstracts, and town halls. As I said, we have been very engaged. We are a member of the organising committee and have been engaged from the outset of the development of this Congress. And a big thanks to Ashok in particular for ensuring that those links were there from the very early days of planning, and that we could really make the connection and take the outcomes from Barcelona and feed them into this process. We have secured plenary interventions. We have secured 2 sessions within the Congress, one which is on biodiversity, and particularly the role of ocean science to support GBF and BB&J implementation, one on coastal resilience, and then we also have a town hall session on the Ocean Decade, and particularly looking at what progress has been made since Barcelona as we arrive in Nice. The next one then, the Coastal Rise and Resilience Summit, also in Nice, also in the formal conference venue, a day-long event, which, as I said, is really focusing on the role of, or the challenges and solutions for coastal cities, particularly in relation to sea level rise, but also a broader range of resilience issues. We are a member of the steering committee on this one, and we're also co-leading with the Ocean and Climate Platform, the working group on knowledge generation, because a big part of this summit and the coalition that it is going to announce is focused around the use of science and knowledge, and how coastal cities can better be accessing and using science and knowledge. So we are co-leading that working group, and in a few weeks, at the end of February, the Qingdao municipality in China is hosting about 250 partners, including representatives of Nice, to come together in Qingdao for the first Ocean Decade Coastal Cities Conference, which will be an important moment to really talk about some of the science issues that are driving sustainable development decision-making and policy for coastal cities, and this will be an important input to the Coastal Rise and Resilience Summit in Nice. And then finally, the Blue Economy and Finance Forum, as mentioned, 7th and 8th of June in Monaco. We have been speaking to the organisers about this, about having space to really talk about some of the initiatives that we've been working on through the Ocean Decade and more broadly within IOC, a strong focus on some of the philanthropic work that has been underway in the Ocean Decade and some new tools that philanthropic group has been developing to better target their investments in ocean science. And we're also looking to showcase some new work that we're undertaking with OECD and IHO, looking at methodologies and frameworks for rigorous calculation of the return on investment in ocean science. So those sessions are a little less well developed compared to the other ones at the moment, but we're still very confident in having a strong showing at the BEF and really having some of those complementary discussions, bringing science to the BEF, just as we're aiming to talk about investment and financing throughout the other parts of UNOC. Finally, then to finish up before we open it up to questions and answer, just to let you to give you an overview of what our current thinking is on some of the parallel or offsite events that IOC will be leading. So this is in addition to any engagement in the formal conference, and in addition to the pre-conference special events, which are being led by France and Costa Rica. These are our sort of package of IOC-led events, again, throughout all of these different events and points of engagement, where we're focusing on the common priorities, that common role that Vida identified. And so some of these offsite events are really opportunities to explore or dive deeper, or have different formats, I would say, for conversation and dialogue. So some of these include a high-level meeting of the Ocean Decade Alliance, for example. So this is our group of heads of state, head of industry, and heads of philanthropy. We hope to have as many heads of state and heads of private sector and philanthropic organizations there as possible for a meeting of the Ocean Decade Alliance, potentially, hopefully, on the 8th of June, and also hopefully on board a ship. I just got off a call with the ship, the Norwegian tall ship, that we're hoping will be the location for this alliance meeting, which will be a moment really to discuss some of the work that the alliance has been doing, and particularly a new initiative about seabed mapping. We're also planning for the decade to have a full day Ocean Decade Forum, really to showcase the achievements of the decade to date, but more importantly, as we did in Barcelona, to keep looking forward, and particularly as June 2025 marks exactly the midpoint of the decade, to really look forward to the second part of the decade. And that one-day forum will be on the 11th of June in an off-site venue. We're also then looking at events that are starting to take shape around marine pollution, around seabed mapping, and linking that to data sharing, particularly the role of industry and private sector. As I mentioned, investment in ocean science, sustainable ocean planning. We're also obviously discussing events around ocean literacy, ocean observation, and others. We've just brought on some extra human resources to help us coordinate this and really make sure that we have a very consolidated and coherent set of impactful events that are not just a flash in the pan one day event, but really are moments that help create a broader conversation and have a post-UNOC impact. And in terms of location, we'll obviously be continuing to inform all of you where these different events will be held, but there'll be a mix of locations, including the green zone, offsite venues, and we hope to have several aboard ships, research vessels that are berthed in the port of Nice, where we have some great connections to some of our partners that are going to have their ships there for the week. So I will stop there. I know that's a lot of information, but I think we still have some good time for question and answer, and I'll hand back to you, Julian.
Great, thank you very much, Alison. Indeed, quite an exhaustive summary of what is in the pipeline, and I also shared on the chat some additional information, particularly the website of the UN Ocean Conference, where you will also find information about accreditation and registration process, as well as the website for the One Ocean Science Congress for the registration, which is currently open for quite some time again. So as you will have heard, still very much a program is being built, and there are certainly some other areas that maybe are not on the slides. For example, there will be a strong focus on ocean literacy, particularly in the green zone, and some events as mentioning the role of data vis-a-vis specific delivery areas, for example, biodiversity, pollution, climate change, amongst others. So in terms of the process, this now that the call for side events was actually formally launched last week, I think it will probably take a few more weeks until we have a more or less consolidated programs, but I would anticipate that by the end of March, early April, we should have a clear vision of all those events and engagement opportunities for member states in particular. And I want to insist on this because this is not just for Secretariat, but this is really about also getting your voice as member states to share your experience, to share your priorities, and also to provide platforms for commitments. So with this, I would like to suggest that we open the floor for any questions or comments that we may have from the audience. We still have about half an hour left before the end of our call. So I'm happy to take any questions. Please do use the React button where you can raise your hand, and then we'll pass the floor over to you. Okay, I see two hands up, and the first one was Alan Evans. Alan, over to you.
Thank you, Julian, and thank you, Alison and Vida and the representatives from Costa Rica and France for the presentation. I think it's been wonderfully helpful for us as member states of the IOC to be provided with this information session. So thank you all for making the time and the effort. I just had a quick question on the declaration. And again, thank you for sharing the zero draft and the suggested text that the IOC would like to see in the declaration. Just for clarity, the sharing of that through the circular letter was to try to encourage us as IOC member states to speak with our government representatives to try to get that text into the declaration. So just clarity on that point. Also, will the IOC be feeding in directly text? I'm assuming it would be the same text. And thirdly, just from a member state's perspective, the declaration is very much a generic, high-level, aspirational document. However, I don't see much relation to actual SDG 14 and its targets and indicators. Now, of course, the aspiration to undertake many of the calls in the declaration will support that, but it would be nice to see more direct links between those and the targets of SDG 14 so that we can see direct link of how those requests actually help move SDG 14 to be better fulfilled. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan. Great questions. Maybe I can give you some feedback, and of course, Vida and Alison may also jump in. But indeed, the circular letter was written with the intention to provide some content and potential suggestions to member states in their intervention to basically influence the drafting of the declaration. As we've explained, this declaration is very much a member states-led process, where in fact UN agencies do not have the same level of weight when it comes to statements. When for example, you have a member state or groups of member states speaking. So it is our intention to still provide these some suggestions to the Secretariat of UNDESA, and we are in discussion with them so that they can relay those to the co-facilitator of a political declaration, which are Cabo Verde and Australia. But I think we should really encourage member states as much as possible to be also spokesperson for some of those issues within the declaration and through the New York missions, who are basically attending all those negotiating meetings in the coming weeks until the end of March. So that is really our invitation and guidance here. And on your comment related to the maybe lack of response to some of these SDG 14 targets, we tend to agree with your assessment. Certainly, the zero draft was put forward based on an initial consultation meeting that took place in July, and we were actually at this one as well, and Vidar had a chance to intervene. But to some extent, we think that the declaration could indeed be reinforced, and particularly in terms of highlighting the role of marine scientific research, but also in other areas which are related to different targets. So that's my view. I don't know if anybody else from the Secretariat or if Vidar or Alison. I don't see anyone. No. Okay. So thanks for that, Alan. Then let's go to Roberto de Pino from Brazil. Over to you, Roberto. And you're muted. We can't hear you. Okay, good.
Thank you, Julian and Alison, for your very clear presentation. Thank you for the distinguished representatives from Costa Rica, France, and IOC for this session. I first comment on the subject brought up by Alan, and to thank you for providing that letter and comments. The Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation in Brazil has supported that and has asked our government to bring along some of the suggestions and using the text that you have proposed, especially regarding the Ocean Decade Conference and ocean literacy. Now, I have a very short, this was just a comment, and again, to thank you. I have a very short comment, which is the application limit that's mentioned. Is it one for each, or one for on-site, off-site, and online, or is it a limit for one application only, and we have to choose the category? And a follow-up question to that is, will there be a process that events might be merged or reclassified and in between those processes? So thank you for that, as we're planning on how we're going to be submitting our applications. Thank you very much.
Great question, Roberto. And indeed, this is also a question we have actually asked ourselves with Alison when we saw the guidelines, whether given that there are two categories of events basically on the table in the blue zone and offsite, whether this restriction of one submission applies to one or to both. So Alison, unless you have an answer to that, but I don't think we do have an answer, but we are going to raise that question with.
Exactly. We're going to check with colleagues at UNDESA because it's not entirely clear. But they, on this related second question, they do say that there is potential for merging, and they actually ask you, would you be open to merging, noting that if you're not open to merging, it's going to reduce your chances, or to having potentially a shift from the blue zone to green zone. So that piece is already addressed in the guidelines, and on the first piece, we're going to seek clarification.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, I see we have a question from Dr. Hamed Al-Gailani.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for Costa Rica, France, and IOC. I am presenting here the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change in Qatar. I want to ask about the invitation of the conference. Will be any invitation to the ministry for the invitation for the presence present in the conference, and this will be at which level? I mean, the minister should be attend, or the undersecretary, or the scientist, or who will attend? And are there any deadline for registration? What I think Qatar is not maybe member in the IOC. So what about the non-member? If they can register now or they can attend even if they are not a member? That's now the questions in general. Thank you very much for all effort, and I wish you the best.
Thank you very much, Doctor. And I see our friend Ashok has a point to bring to this question. Over to you, Ashok.
Thank you. I did not know how to raise my digital hand, so I rose my real hand. Just to reply on that, there are, I would say, 2 or 3 sets of invitation, plus all the different invitations of the many different activities that UNOC is bringing together. The first invitation, as this is a UN Ocean Conference, it's from the UN General Secretary to all the member states, which went last fall. I don't remember when exactly, maybe October or September, end of September, to all the different missions. A very short letter to all the head of missions in New York, that means all the member states, including Qatar, to invite the leaders to invite the country at the highest level of representation. I think that was the language, to attend. What we did, and we told our friends and partners from Costa Rica, is that President Macron sent a personal letter to all his counterparts, inviting them on the 8th of June to Nice for the celebrations of the World Ocean Day, because it's happening in Nice and it's the day before the conference starts. And he sent also a letter, I don't know if it has been received, to his counterpart, President Chavez, saying how happy he is to welcome him and then open the next day with him as co-host and with the General Secretary, the UN Ocean Conference. And that was sent to, again, all the leaders, again, to bring attention, not to us, but to the UNOC, in addition to that letter which was sent by the SG of the UN to the member states, that means the missions. Then there are the scientific community, which has been invited by the One Ocean Science Congress organizers and its partners. I don't know where they are, but there's still letters. There's a website you can register. I mean, these 3 UNOC special events, which are conducted by 3, I would say, although they're national organizations or even a country like Monaco, but they're run a bit independently. Although France and Costa Rica, we would say, co-sponsors of these events to make them UNOC special events, and that we participate in the steering committee. So look out for invitations for the Scientific Congress, for the Blue Economy and Finance Forum that the 2 foundations from Monaco have been sending, and also for the invitation of the city of Nice, who chairs this coalition that Alison was discussing of, coastal cities and regions, and which will meet on the 7th of June. And then again, there have been letters sent by the mayor of Nice to invite on the 7th of June to Nice for this summit of coastal regions and cities. So these are the 3, 4 kind of letters sent to the countries.
Thank you, Ashok. And let me also clarify a couple of things. Is first that this is not an IOC conference. This is really a UN conference, and therefore, all member states of the United Nations are therefore invited. And I'm sure the letter from the Secretary General that Ashok referred to must have gone to all UN missions. And I think that's probably also important for technical agencies within the countries to also liaise with their Ministry of Foreign Affairs and UN missions, because they're the ones in the end who will probably put together the national delegations that will attend the UN Ocean Conference formally. So if you want to be part of that, I think you need to engage with those, with your own national foreign affairs entities to raise your interest. So thank you for this. Very good question. Let me see if there's anybody else that would like to come in. I see no questions. Last chance. Okay. Hopefully it's all clear. Okay, well then, oh yes, we have a question from Teresa Salado from Portugal. Over to you, Teresa.
Bonjour tout le monde, bonjour Julian. Ma question concerne la réunion de l'Alliance de la décennie pour les océans. Est-ce que cette réunion aura une invitation séparée? Elle sera adressée par qui? Voici, c'était juste cette question. Pour le reste, je vous félicite. Superbe présentation. Bravo.
Merci beaucoup, Teresa. And if you don't mind, I'll switch to English for probably most participants there will probably understand English rather than French. So I just want to confirm that. So indeed, there will be a specific invitation for the Decade Alliance members. And depending on the level of the membership, this will come either from our executive secretary or from the Director General of UNESCO, and this will certainly apply for heads of states level invitation. Okay, I hope that answers your question. And then I think that's it. We have no other questions. Teresa, your hand is still up, just to make sure that that's an old hand.
That's an old hand indeed. Sorry.
Right. Okay, dear colleagues, and if this answers or provides you with the guidance for how to move forward in the next weeks, we feel then we have accomplished our role today, which was really to explain a little bit in more details those the processes and different type of ways of engaging. So we very much look forward to continue working with you. First of all, at the policy level in advocating for the issues, because we certainly want to make sure that the right focus is in the political declaration vis-à-vis the importance of ocean science, of observation, of infrastructure, of ocean literacy, all those issues that many of you member states care about. And then we look forward also to engage more concretely in the events themselves and having your participation as much as we can. So we will probably have another, I think, information session in maybe a month and a half from now, where we will have a more to report on the events themselves, but also on where we are with the political declaration and all the rest. So until then, thanks a lot for all your support, and we look forward to working with you. And please don't hesitate to reach out to the Secretariat if you need any other information. And as I said, the recording of this session will be shared by email. With this, thank you very much, and have a good rest of the week.